Fairy Tail 100 Years Quest Arc, Chapter 8. This took things in a different direction for me. So let's take this one step at a time. The confrontation between those Dragon Eaters and the newly, I guess, not revealed because we saw him a little bit earlier, but like, newly appeared Water God Dragon didn't happen. As soon as he shows up and like, they're getting ready to rumble, the two Dragon Eaters get like, they basically get teleported away, and that's the end of that confrontation. It's implied that like, maybe their leader decided that things are not what they should be, so they get taken out of the system. So that leaves Fairy Tail to deal with the Water God Dragon. Once again, you were like thinking, oh god, they're gonna fight. Nope, not gonna fight. Turns out the Water God Dragon is actually kind of a nice guy. Who knew? After kind of talking some and realizing that, you know what, Water God Dragon's kind of a nice guy, Fairy Tail's kind of a group of nice people for the most part, they start chit-chatting, and the Water God Dragon invites them to his palace, I guess. We then get introduced to the Water God Dragon's assistant. We get introduced to his assistant. I guess he had at one point saved her from a shipwreck, and they just got close at one point, and I imagine it's kind of a father-daughter kind of situation. He's a dragon. So I imagine it's similar, maybe not the same, but similar to how the dragons raised like Natsu and Gajiel and Wendy and all the Dragon Slayers. So maybe similar in that sense. Instead of it becoming a parent-child situation, it's more like a, oh, Lord and Savior, I guess. So anyways, they're talking. Turns out that Water God Dragon actually kind of agrees with, I'm gonna butcher his name, Eleftheria. So Eleftheria, it sounds to me like he's got a grudge against these dragons, not because of just like, oh, they're dragons and they should be taken out, but apparently, or at the very least for the Water God Dragon, he had killed Eleftheria's family at one point. The Water God Dragon at one point was kind of more of a animalistic type of dragon where instinctually he was going after humans and other animals and whatever, but then somehow came down from that and kind of became a bit more human, I guess, human? Anyways, so it turns out that he kind of agrees that maybe he should be sealed away. As long as Fairy Tail is not interested in fighting him, he's not interested in fighting them, but he agrees that the sealing probably should be done. And not for the reason that, not for the past, but for what's in the future. So he makes a case that his powers are actually growing out of control, and that he needs to eventually kind of just disappear, because otherwise he's going to cause a great deal of damage to not just the surrounding area of this town that they're near, but like even further out. So even if people moved away from this town to get away from the rising tides, the rising tides would continue to rise. So that's an interesting that's an interesting thing to it. I was not expecting at the very least, I'm sure maybe the other four dragons are different, but I was not expecting from the demeanor that they were giving off of the Water God Dragon that he would be kind of like a reasonable guy, at the very least reasonable. He seems to genuinely not want to cause any terrible trouble. At the same time, if you mess with him, he's not going to take anything. So I guess that's kind of like, that's basically par for the course for any Fairy Tail character in general. But yeah, so they basically, the largest part of this chapter is them chit-chatting. Not my favorite part. It's some interesting, like, setup stuff, but it's just basically, oh, yeah, no. They're chit-chatting about how he agrees that he should be sealed, but he's waiting for the right people to come do it. That's basically where it comes. And I guess a lot of assassins, he calls these people that take the quest up as assassins. So basically, yes. The Water God Dragon also has a certain amount of magical power that involves transformation to some degree. He was able to transform Wendy back into human form because she was still stuck as the jellyfish thing. So it sounds like he's got a certain amount of power. I guess he was the one that gave the townsfolk the ability to turn into fish because they were originally humans. So that's an interesting thing. It brings me to wonder, so we've seen a number of dragons at this point, and they all have a certain amount of magical power. Some breathe fire, some have, I guess, steel. Like, they have the abilities, like, that the Dragon Slayers have. They're children, and that makes me wonder, like, do all dragons have additional power other than their main, like, focus? Like, I imagine the Water God Dragon, his main magical ability is water in general, maneuvering water, maybe making water, I don't know. But he has the power to control water in some capacity. But he also seems to have other subsets of abilities that are maybe beyond normal humans and other magic users. So I'm wondering, do all dragons have this, or is it the Pentadragons that are very special in that way? Does he have abilities that Igneel and Metallicana and the other dragons don't have? Or is this something that all of them have had? That's my question for that. So basically, their part of the chapter ends with him being like, I want to be kind of sealed away because eventually I'll be out of control and that'll be no good for anybody. I'm waiting for the right people. I think he sees fairy tales maybe being, hopefully those people because of how they've treated him. I found it really funny that when you think they're about to fight, like, Water God Dragons goes, so you guys want to fight? Natsu's like, nope, we're good. So that kind of diffused the tension automatically, and they were just like, okay, whatever. But yeah, so it's some interesting things. I'm a little, I don't know if I'm disappointed or whatever, but I'm not really anything, I guess, at this point. But I'm a little hesitant because this does seem like one of those things where it's like, well, of course they can't just make the dragons be a little bit evil or whatever. I mean, maybe some of them are. Maybe there are evil dragons and the Water God Dragon is just different. But yeah, so it's a development at this point for the Water God Dragon and Fairy Tail going at each other. I guess we'll just find out. So before we jump from Fairy Tail and the Water God Dragon, I wanna harp on one thing. He says that he is willing to be sealed away. And he actually wants to because of all of his powers being kind of growing out of control. But there's one thing that is holding him back, and which is his greatest miscalculation and his biggest nightmare, basically. And we got a shot of them all looking serious and being like, what's that? And then him looking serious, and then it basically cuts away, and we don't know. So I'm wondering if they show what that is for next chapter, or whether it's just like, here's a little taste of something. We'll see what happens later. But yeah, so then they cut away. They cut back to the Dragon Eaters. The Dragon Eaters are then showing to, like, the woman's, like, yelling at their leader. I guess he's their leader. They made it sound like she was being kind of like, here's the thing. She's talking to him in kind of a brutish way. So maybe they just have a good relationship. I don't know. But I'm assuming this is their leader. She's yelling at him because she was gonna fight the Water God Dragon, and the armor guy is like, calm down. He's just like, whatever. Then they get told that things have changed. They're no longer going to fight the Water God Dragon, at least not yet. And he must not be eaten, is what the leader says. So things are different. We don't know why yet. Now, here is the thing that really got me. This guy. This guy looks ridiculous. It's the last page of the chapter, and I was not expecting this. It's ridiculous. He looks dumb as hell. I got a pretty good laugh out of this. It's just ridiculous. This chapter is so weird. You go from thinking that there's going to be at least somewhat of a fight to suddenly it devolving into, oh, they're just going to chit-chat, the Water God Dragon's kind of a cool guy, and the Dragon Eaters get teleported away, and it's no big deal. But yeah, so, like, this is a weird chapter, and then it ends with this guy, and I don't know what to think. Fairy Tail, what are you doing to me? I don't hate his design, but I just think it's the dumbest thing in the world. I think he looks so stupid. What do you guys think? Do you guys think this guy looks stupid? Because I think he kind of looks stupid. But yeah, so that's that. In the last page, he basically says, like, oh, the Water God Dragon's deceiving these Dragon Eaters, and that he's a false Water God. That's the most interesting thing in this chapter, I think. So between the Water God Dragon saying he's got something he regrets and he needs to fix before he goes, and the fact that he's losing his ability to control his abilities, and then you have this false Water God Dragon thing. That's the most interesting crux of the chapter. Meanwhile, you have this schmuck in the weird skeleton armor and looking like a dumb person. My God. But yeah, I enjoyed this chapter for what it was, at the very least. It was a kind of, it made things lighthearted again when I thought that things were gonna get down and dirty. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it's a middle ground thing. Maybe things are coming to a head next chapter. I don't know. Skarian, I think is his name. He looks freaking ridiculous. Yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. Peace.